Hi, I'm Chris Direwald, and this is, in fact, Power Play. America, you lived. So far, you had an election, and it was a doozy. So the two parties find themselves in rather interesting positions right now. The Republicans as unexpected victors, and Democrats in unexpected defeat. Now, for the Democrats, the question becomes nettlesome because the worldview that they had, the structure that they had, was that there was an Obama coalition of younger voters, of minorities, that was going to sweep the party into sort of permanent majority. Now they're rethinking this. How is that going to work out? Who would know? People who would know would be a very happy Matt Schlapp, whose Republican Party shocked the nation with its victory. He's the chairman of the American Conservative Union. Chuck Rocha is a gun rack Democrat. He's not all hat and no cattle. He is a hat with a Hummer. He's the only Democrat you know that wears a cowboy hat and drives a Hummer. Welcome, guys. How we doing?
Good to be here.
Oh, and we should point out Chuck is a proprietor of Solidarity Strategies, and if you want to help beat a Republican in an election, you can hire him.
Absolutely.
These things are true. Okay, Chuck, it's the blue team. Starting with you, there was a belief firmly held among Democrats since before this election that essentially the demographic coalition of the Republican Party was doomed, right? That they just weren't going to get there. And what happened, two things happened. Working class white voters in some counties turned around by as much as 25 points from Democrat to Republican, and these are in union friendly areas in the upper Midwest. And the other thing that happened was the Hispanic wave that everybody was expecting didn't really materialize. Am I calling that right?
You're calling the first one absolutely right, and the second one you're calling a little bit right.
Okay.
In the West, the Latinos did show up, delivered states like Nevada almost single-handedly, and made Arizona a lot closer than it should have been. But in places like Florida, it a little bit underperformed in certain areas. Orlando was a big turnout. But back to your initial thought is that we talked about this before the election, about these models being wrong and about the polls being wrong based off of who was going to turn out.
Right.
My team was saying, oh, the black, brown, the youth coalition, we've got this thing. We're just going to play four corners.
Right.
Donald Trump was saying, let's make America great again, and was talking to rural people and blue-collared union members who believe his message about trade, who are tired of watching their jobs go overseas and really haven't had real wage growth in 20 years.
That's right.
That's how you win an election.
And, Matt, when we look at the path for Republican success, one of the reasons that we were so skeptical about how Trump would do in the upper Midwest was that we assumed this big turnout would take place inside not just the cities, but also among more affluent suburbanites. Not only did the cities not turn out, but Trump did better with these suburbanites, especially women, than we expected. Now, why did that happen? Were these shy Trump votes who were going to come home all the time? Because remember, as we've talked about before, what's the single most important part of the Republican coalition since the Eisenhower era? College-educated white people who live in the suburbs. That is actually the bulwark of the Republican Party. Were they there the whole time and just revealed themselves at the end, or did they shift as they went?
I want to quote Chris Direwald, at least to paraphrase you. The election would get tight, and then she'd get up 6, 7, 8 points.
Couldn't sit on a lead.
Why did this happen? It was a group of voters, I think, that liked to put Donald Trump in timeout when they heard things that were offensive, and they would drift away. But they didn't cut the ties. And I think at the end of the day, the way this campaign finished, and really campaigns are all about the numbers and getting under the hood, but they're also pretty simple. And this campaign really was about change and the fact that they didn't think Hillary Clinton was the type of person they wanted to see in the Oval Office, and they were willing to take the chance on someone like Donald Trump instead of voting for somebody they knew would continue policies that they think are hurting the country.
But as you look at the Democratic coalition, you have to say, and Rui Teixeira, who with John Judas wrote the world-famous 2004 book, The Emerging Democratic Majority, which is why Chuck is standing on top of the roof of the DNC like, guys, read this, look, please. But do you agree, essentially, though, that demography, whether it's this election or in the future, swamps the Republican Party? Teixeira wrote a piece at Vox that said this is the last gasp. This is what it looks like. As the Republicans become more dependent on the white vote, over time they're just going to get swamped.
If we stay racially and ethnically and by gender polarized, that's a bad road for us. If somehow there's realignment going out there and we won't be able to say, like, an overwhelming percentage of Hispanics will always vote for the Democrat, then I think we have hope. I think George W. Bush showed us this hope, and I think Donald Trump shows us this hope as well. I think there's a lot of realignment going on. And I think, look, the other thing that's going on here is people there's all kinds of dynamics, but it's a lot about, do you have a good job?
Yeah.
And do you feel like you can provide for your family? If over the course of the next 2 and 3 years, people start feeling like they have a decent job and their take-home pay is going up, I think these other lines break down.
Chuck, what do Democrats need to do?
The average age of a Latino in America is 27. Mm-hmm. The average age of a white person in America is 37. Mm-hmm. 1 in 4 school children are Latino. Latinos are performing about 20-25% Republican. The rest vote for Democrats.
Right.
That will move one way or the other. You saw it move with George Bush to almost 40%. You go down to Mitt Romney and where we were at right now. That's the future of the coalition, right? That's where you have to. The Republicans would be smart to figure out a way to grow that number for the long term.
Right.
The Democratic Party, in the last 8 years, has lost 11 Senate races, 60 House races, 14 governorships, and 900 state legislators. Whatever they've been doing, it ain't been working.
I call it the Obama effect.
I call it, let's drain the political consultant swamp, right? It's time for new faces, and we need to put people in leadership who look and act like this new majority we're supposedly banking on.
Right.
To see some fresh ideas. Some of that may be Chuck Roach, but other folks.
But you worked for Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And you were part of a very successful insurgency on his part. Bernie Sanders is saying we have to reach out to these places. He represents Vermont. He said we need to be able to reach out to voters in these places. But when it comes to maximizing Democratic vote share, it seems like these two universes are in disagreement. You have blue-collar whites in the upper Midwest who don't like trade and don't like immigration. And then you have this emerging Democratic majority with the Hispanic voters, and it seems to be at odds with that. How do you reconcile the two things?
I don't think it's one or the other. I think you can have a message that talks to both of them. Bernie Sanders has been a stalwart labor guy for his entire life.
True.
But then won the youth vote in every single state under the age of 35 because he was consistent on his message talking about keeping jobs in America, but that there should be some relief for public education.
Free college.
Can I jump in on here?
Yeah, last word.
We're talking about all this race, ethnicity, also religion. Catholics voted for Trump overwhelmingly. Evangelical Christians voted for Trump overwhelmingly. I think the Democratic Party is making a big mistake when they cavalierly shed voters of faith.
But you know what Trump did? And I actually get the last word because it's my show. You know what actually Trump did? He outperformed Romney and prior Republicans with non-believers and infrequent churchgoers. The secularization of America is happening, and Donald Trump is doing better with these non-Christians and infrequent churchgoers than previous Republicans. So look out, Democrats. All right, we got to go. But that's all the time we have, but we hope you'll come back for more Power Play real soon.